Good morning, good morning, good morning. What day is it? It's Tuesday. Don't know why that took me by surprise, but it's Tuesday, the 29th of October. It's the morning blast with myself and Mr. Brown. Whenever he shows up, um, he'll be here. There he is. He's probably sitting there going, I'm here, I'm here. Calm down, Ryan, I'm here. Oh, come on down, Mr. Brown. Is he there? He is. Hello.
Good morning, Ryan. Good morning, everyone.
Morning, how are you?
Well, I've been suffering some technical issues this morning, but
Oh no, what's that? Bus pass not working?
yeah, very funny. No, just various user error with my laptop, I think.
Oh yeah, well, it probably is user error. Let's be honest. Although
Knowing
I
me.
can't talk, I can't talk. Right, let's crack on. What's happened? What's happened overnight, mate? What's happened overnight?
Well, do you not want to get your disclaimer out of the way
Oh
first?
yeah, God, I better. Why not?
Better
One
be on the
sec.
safe side, mate.
Oh yeah, well things are getting a bit more corporate. And I've got to find it first. Where is it? There it is. Nothing
Oh,
discussed on this
God.
basis session constitute trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ Global Limited, Traders PIQ or PIQ Suite, or its affiliates, including the hosts, which is, of course, as always, Mr. Michael Brown and myself, Mr. Ryan Paisley. There you go. You happy now? Want to crack on?
I am indeed happy now. Yes, we can crack on. Good morning, everyone. I guess we'll start with the same housekeeping that I started with yesterday,
Oh,
given
no.
that one of our listeners decided to completely ignore me, which is that the gap between London and New York is only 4 hours this week. So if anyone wants to trade the cash open, it's at 1:30, not at 2:30, Zach.
Zach.
Anyway, moving on, what happened after the market opened yesterday was not a lot, to be completely
All
honest
right.
with you. It was a
Tune in
very
tomorrow.
Yes, indeed, a bit of that. It was quite a choppy and directionless day. We did see the S&P gain about 0.3% at the close, but we did close around the middle of the range. Traded during the session, the Nasdaq ended the day pretty much unchanged. We did, though, see Treasury yields continuing to rise, and actually that rise has continued this morning with the 10-year trading to 4.3% for the first time since mid-July. The selling pressure exacerbated somewhat yesterday by what was relatively poorly received supply. The 2-year auction tailing by 0.8 basis points, the 5-year auction yesterday tailing by 1.6 basis points. And of course, you've still got some folk out there claiming that there's a Trump trade going on. Although the way I view Trump odds versus 10-year yield charts is the same way that I was viewing Fed balance sheet versus S&P 500 charts a few years ago. Basically, they're absolute nonsense. The foreign exchange market, the dollar traded a little bit softer, although within a relatively tight 104.10 to 104.50 range when we look at the dollar index. Other G10s, though, failing to take full advantage, with cable not able to reclaim the 130 figure during yesterday's session. The Aussie and the Kiwi dollars sliding by around about 0.4% apiece, while the yen was obviously the biggest loser after the weekend election news and evolving political shambles that is now happening over in Japan. We saw dollar yen trade north of 153, the yen around about 1% softer on the day. The other big mover yesterday was down by about 6% on the day, settling below $67.50 a barrel. Both Brent and WTI yesterday notching their biggest one-day declines since the middle of 2022. And of course, this comes after the much anticipated Israeli response to the Iranian missile barrage launched towards the beginning of October. That focused on military targets, not any oil or energy or nuclear infrastructure. And that has somewhat soothed market
Just
concerns about a potential
quickly
for
on
sort
that.
of tit for tat escalation.
Just
Go
quickly
on.
on that, save us talking about it and then coming back to it 3 minutes later, 5 minutes later. Worth noting that it was reported last night that this response that Israel's carried out was purely in retaliation for the missiles, and apparently there's a second response brewing for the drone attack on Netanyahu's personal residence. So one to bear in mind. I'm not saying that they're now going to go after oil infrastructure. I'm just flagging it.
Indeed, it is worth bearing in mind. I mean, the market does seem the market's perception of geopolitical risk has reduced quite
Oh,
substantially,
absolutely.
and that's why you saw crude basically fall off a cliff yesterday. But of course, if we were to see more strikes or another round of strikes, then back up we go.
Yeah.
That's how this is going to work. The other thing, just while we're on the Middle East, I appreciate you may be about to mention this, so sorry if I'm stealing your thunder. I see Hezbollah have finished drawing straws, and a new chap has drawn the shortest one. I haven't got his name
I,
here, but they have
I
announced a new leader
I
this
do.
morning. So we'll open a book on how long he
I
lasts.
would like to see if poly markets could start putting up markets for days these guys live once they're elected. Well, I don't know what my market would be, but it wouldn't be very. There's not much of a bid in it. I'll put it that way.
No, I can't imagine there would be. In terms of other bits and bobs from yesterday, then a little bit of one for the purists, but the US Treasury, they were out with their quarterly refunding announcement in terms of the financing estimates. They marginally trimmed the Q4 borrowing estimate. That now stands at 546 billion for a prior 565. Given how much they're borrowing, I'm not sure 20 billion makes particularly much difference, but we will get the issuance breakdown on Wednesday, about an hour before the cash open, which again, for those at the back, is 1:30 in the
Yeah.
afternoon this week.
Zach.
We also had a few bits and bobs of corporate news yesterday. Meta, they are reportedly developing an AI search engine. I mean, good luck to them, to be completely honest with you. If people are going to suddenly start searching the internet using Facebook rather than Google, I can't see that happening, to be honest, but one to watch nonetheless. We did see Alphabet shares come under a little bit of pressure yesterday. Boeing, they announced their capital raise. The rumor over the weekend had been that it was going to be 15 billion, 1-5. They actually announced 19 billion, a combination of shares and depository receipts. This is, of course, because Boeing have a big liquidity issue going on at the moment, and all of their workers are on strike. They are trying desperately to stave off a potential ratings downgrade to junk status. And very recent reports, actually via Reuters and our friends at News Squad, is apparently China are looking at some more fiscal stimulus. Reuters saying that they are considering the approval of a fresh fiscal package, which could be worth over 10 trillion renminbi. That would be 6 trillion to address local government debt and 4 trillion to acquire what is being called idle land.
Just on this, as I've mentioned, we mentioned yesterday that obviously this meeting was happening on the 8th, and Barclays were kind of quite bullish the fact that something chunky would be announced. I'm still skeptical that even if they announce something, anything will be actually hitting bank accounts, so to speak, if Trump wins, purely because, as a few other people on the street have noted, that you don't want to commit to actually paying out these funds until you actually know what Trump's going to do if Trump wins.
Yes,
So we might see. And China are great for this. China are great at announcing packages, but when you actually drill down and see, well, hang on, how much did they actually then go forward and actually allocate in terms of real money? Very little. So this could be a classic version of that. And perhaps timing wise, and this is me with me skeptical, cynical tinfoil hat on, tinfoil fedora. Perhaps they're front running the fact that Trump will be elected, and that will weigh on China potentially because obviously he wants to put tariffs on and all stuff like that. So then the day after, the morning after, you say, well, hang on, we're also going to stick a load of fiscal packages into the mix. So that would kind of balance out potentially the negative trade or the offer coming into markets based on Trump's winning. That's how I'm looking at it. But that is me being quite
yeah.
skeptical,
Well, no, I
cynical
think
rather.
it's wise to be skeptical with this sort of thing, or cynical, or whatever you want to call it. The other thing I would mention is just in terms of China stimulus more broadly. If anyone's thinking about trading it, you've got to bear in mind that, well, quite the market's expectation in terms of stimulus is so stupendously high that it's almost a case of no matter what the Chinese government announce, it's going to struggle to meet what the market is
That
expecting.
sounds like
And the
my
market
Tinder
is constantly
profile.
going to be going, oh, Christ. The market's constantly going to be going, we want more, we want a bigger package, all the rest of it.
Oi, oi.
So, yeah,
It sounds exactly
just
like my
one to
Tinder
bear in mind.
profile.
fuck's sake. Right, I'm going to stop talking
All
now.
right, thank you. Right, some tidbits. Oh God. From our friends Andrew, who's listening. Hi, Andrew. Zach, who's listening, and the boys at News Corp. Obviously, News Corp Pro is available on PIQ Suites, which is amazing. I need to do some kind of videos of that when it's live over non-farm payrolls and etc. So just some quick headlines via this.
Fucking hell, it'd be a miracle if you're at your desk for a non-farm
Well, yeah,
payroll number, let alone filming
this is the
anything.
problem. Oh, well, I can do it from the Stafford, but anyway, we digress. Rich is listening, so we're moving on, moving on. We're going to start off with a fact of the day, courtesy of Andrew, which obviously you've also helped tweet with a chart. So I'll put the tweet up in a second. So on this day, well, sorry, on yesterday, on previous election years, the SPY, so the S&P ETF, in 2016 was up 6%. In 2020 was up 3% on the year, and this year, yesterday, was up a whopping 24% on the year. Incredible numbers. Yeah, so one to think about. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, but
It is, and actually, sorry,
go on,
just on
go on.
that, it reinforces what we've been. I actually wrote this in a note this
Okay.
morning. It reinforces what we've been saying for a while now, which is that the S&P is up 24% year to date. Who the hell wants to gamble a 24% move over what is effectively a coin flip election?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a coin flip, but I still think that it's, if you have got money on the sidelines, why would you put it in between now and the year end if you've already made a whopping amount of money just being long the S&P, which a lot of these people are. But yes, it's
Yeah.
same outcome, but different ways of thinking about it. I agree. But this is it, right? There's lots of ways to go about thinking this, but a lot of them come down to why would you now park money in the S&P for the rest of the year?
Yes.
There's a
Exactly.
lot of reasons to take profit. I'll give you a clue. But anyway, moving on. Just on credit, one thing that Andrew notes is US high yield credit spreads are at their tightest level since June 2007. In Japan, Japan's leader of the opposition, the DPP, obviously it's all kicking off over there, said the Bank of Japan should avoid making big changes in its ultra loose monetary policy now that real wage growth is still at a standstill, suggesting it should wait for certainty at next year's spring wage negotiations. Well, let's be honest. The Bank of Japan will be a little bit mad to do anything right now, whilst it's all up in the air politically in Japan. Um, Iron
Yes.
ore retreated from the highest close in 2 weeks yesterday on the revised port inventories in China, which is obviously the biggest importer of the steel making ingredient. The number of China's dollar billionaires has fallen by more than a third in the past 3 years. Um, yeah, sucks to be them, I guess. Uh, Moving over to the US is said to be seeking up to 3 million barrels of oil for the SPR for delivery through to next May. This is of note. We've always, we know they're always looking to top it up, and they have long-standing programs to top it up. But one thing to note on this purchase would leave the government with little money to buy more until lawmakers approve more funds. So basically, the pot to buy more oil with is dwindling, and obviously we'll have to wait and see what happens with the election to see if there's going to be more for that. Obviously, one thing to note on this is this SPR isn't your grandfather's SPR. The US now produce so much oil, and they're now such a big exporter that the necessity for an SPR is much less than it used to be back in the day when they were importing everything. So just one thing to bear in mind.
Mhm.
Um, the the DIHK in Germany have been out today saying the German GDP is expected to contract in 2024 and stagnate in 2025. Ian is loving this news. A couple of key quotes on this, which I'm just flagging because they're tragic. Is one, this is from the boss of the DIHK. He says, we are not just dealing with a cyclical, but a stubborn structural crisis in Germany. Lovely jubbly. And secondly, he said, we are.
For those who are confused, that's an economics way of saying they're utterly
Oh, I
fucked.
love it when you swear. It sounds so like, oh, it sounds so uncomfortable. He also went on to say, we are greatly concerned about how much Germany is becoming an economic burden for Europe and can no longer fulfill its role as an economic workhorse. Oof. Yeesh, sucks to be them. In the UK shop prices declined in October for the third consecutive month due to easing food prices and discounts on non-food items that aim to capitalise on a housing market pickup, according to Nielsen IQ and the BRICS latest report. BRC, sorry, not BRICS. Oh God. Um, Over in Sweden, big news this morning. Sweden entered a technical recession this morning officially after its initial Q3 GDP figures printed a surprise decline in both Q on Q and year on year growth. Um, Crossing the Atlantic in Argentina, President Milei has seen his popularity rating rebound sharply in October, latest polls showed, and it was attributed to the success of the improving economy with inflation and the deficit both down, whilst foreign reserves are up. Although it must be noted that by official measures, poverty has risen sharply. So austerity biting in there, but you can argue, and some would argue, that this is short-term pain for long-term gain. Geopolitical news. Obviously, we've already touched on Iran and Israel and all that. But just one thing to note is reported in the Wall Street Journal that Iran's Russian-made air defense equipment stopped only a few of the hundreds of missiles that were launched, battering the reputation of Russian military equipment. Also, should be noted that pretty much all of these air defense systems were blown up by the Israelis. Also, speaking of air defense, the US apparently, according to the Wall Street Journal, is running low on some types of air defense missiles, raising questions about the Pentagon's readiness to respond to the continuing wars in the Middle East, Europe, and potential conflict in the Pacific. And finally, on equities, firstly in chips, TSMC said it could raise the price for its 3 nanometer, or whatever that nano NMs, nanomicrons, or with nanometers. No idea. Basically, they could be raising prices by up to.
Tom Talks Cars must be
Well,
there
he is actually.
cringing at
Oh
us
my
now.
God, he's shaking his head. I can feel it. But anyway, they'll be raising their prices by as much as 20%, and they're currently in negotiation with clients. BP reported higher than expected third quarter profits of 2.3 billion, but it was their lowest in almost 4 years, weighed down by the drop in refining profits and weaker oil trading. Maintained the dividend and buyback program. Nothing as reliable as a BP buyback program. In Chinese electrical vehicle names, stocks rallied yesterday in Hong Kong after state media reported the government measures to support the sector's development. Sticking with EVs, Tesla. Apparently, Q4 domestic China sales are running down about 19.6% Q on Q through 4 weeks, and fell 23.5% week on week in the just reported week that was released just now. In fact, Andrew goes on to say this is the weakest week in four figures. So again, this is the weakest week four figure since at least Q4 2023. So bad news for Tesla if this comes to be accurate. Ford yesterday obviously had earnings on that, down 6% in after hours, said the full year earnings would be at the low end of its forecast as the car maker struggles to cut costs and overhaul its EV strategy. And the biggest news of the day is that McDonald's franchise owners are now able to repair the McFlurry machines themselves rather than wait for McDonald's, which should mean the years long struggle for fast food kind of McFlurries at McDonald's should come to an end. Now, I think I speak for everyone listening that this is the biggest news of the day, and we should be very proud. It's a big day for us.
Yes. Right,
Go
moving
on.
on to the day ahead. It's an interesting one, actually,
Is
albeit
it?
a relatively quiet start. Yes, it is interesting, actually. At 2 p.m. this afternoon, we've got a couple of releases out of the United States. Firstly, we have the September job openings data, the jobs figure expected at bang on 8 million for a prior 8.04 million. Of course, this data references September, so there is no real sort of read across to the October employment report that we have due out on Friday lunchtime. Also at 2 o'clock, we have the latest consumer confidence figures from the Conference Board. That index expected at 99.5 for a prior 98.7. And of course, that comes after the University of Michigan's sentiment survey that was revised higher on Friday, when that data came out on Friday afternoon. Other bits and bobs today, we have 7-year supply from the United States, a $44 billion auction at 5 o'clock this evening. Speakers, We hear from the Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem. He is testifying to the Canadian Parliament, and the new SNB Governor Martin Schlegel will also be speaking. And another busy slate of corporate open. We hear from firms such as PayPal, Pfizer, JetBlue, and the one Ryan just mentioned, McDonald's. We'll see whether
Loving it.
they get a boost from the McFlurry news. And after the market close, Alphabet, they kick off the earnings season for the Magnificent Seven. A chunky 5.5% move in the stock is implied by derivatives. We also hear from AMD. There may be some read across to Nvidia, and we also hear from Visa after the close as well. So a busy slate of earnings for everyone to get their teeth into. And once again, mainly for Zach's benefit, those earnings, the market closes at 8 p.m. London time.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, as always, my dear friend. Listeners, thank you for tuning in, as always. Yeah, and if you are trading today, keep it tight, and we will catch you tomorrow.
Well,
Cheers,
indeed.
buddy.
Thanks, guys. Bye bye.
Time for the awkward silence. Do, 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 do.